So the infected tibial non-unions pose with particular challenges. That is, we often have poor soft tissue coverage, and there is often comminution that we have seen in we see in the tibia, which can lead to limb shortening and might require lengthening. And there are associated contractures of the adjacent joints, and the most often one being the equinus contracture, which is often seen in the ankle. And this at times can pose problems with weight bearing. And my colleagues have already emphasized these points, but I'm just re-emphasizing them. There are three most important principles in management of any infected non-union. The first one starts off with aggressive debridement. The second one is stable fixation. And third one is appropriate antibiotic coverage. And debridement, most of us know this. We always remove all the necrotic and unhealthy granulation tissue. And in tibia, most of the times it would have been an intramedullary nail which causes intramedullary infection. So you do a good thorough reaming of the intramedullary canal on either side of the fracture, and at times it might even require removal of the necrotic bone if we think it is not healthy, which would leave large bone defects. And sometimes, and we also have to remember that not all sclerotic bone is infected bone. So be cautious. We have to be cautious in the amount of bone that we remove. And PET scans at times can be very useful, especially in multiple infections. These can very well delineate between healthy bone and unhealthy bone. And the next one is, after we do a thorough debridement, the next thing is stable fixation. That is, we can either do it with a two-stage internal fixation or an external fixation. External fixation most often is Ilizarov or an LRS. And I think, as my colleagues have already said, we have got multiple advantages of an Ilizarov, where it is more accommodating and more versatile, and you can get better fixation when it is closer to the particular joint. Like in this case, where the fracture is pretty close to the ankle joint, Ilizarov can give a very good purchase in the small fragment as well. Irrespective of what you do, whether you do an Ilizarov or an LRS, adherence to the principles, that is providing a stable fixation and following the principles of limb lengthening, are pretty important. And the third and the most important point is antibiotic delivery. And normally we send 2 to 3 intraoperative cultures, and depending upon the culture and sensitivity, we can start intravenous or oral antibiotics. Normally we give intravenous antibiotics for about 10 days to 2 weeks. And we serially monitor the C-reactive proteins and also the local wound, looking for any discharge and looking if the induration and the redness is subsided and the swelling is subsided. And then we gradually shift into oral antibiotics. But I think rather than this, a local antibiotic delivery system would give very high doses of antibiotics at the desired site, that is at the non-union site. So Stimulan is one very good option which can give very high concentrations of local antibiotics. And the main advantage with Stimulan is that it can resorb completely in 6 weeks' time, and you don't need an other surgery to remove these antibiotic beads, which is commonly placed via polymethyl methacrylate beads. Bone grafting is another question that is often debated with non-unions, but most of the times, if you are doing an Ilizarov, we very rarely need a bone grafting. And I normally reserve it for resistant cases or in some cases where there are some cortical deficiencies. Like in this case, this is an elderly gentleman with a known who's a known CKD patient. And this patient, he had 4 prior failed surgeries for non-union of the distal tibia. So this patient, at 8 months post-operatively, I felt that this fracture is united, and unfortunately 5 days later, he is presented with it, which shows that it is not very well united. So in this case, I've again reapplied the fixator, and then I've bone grafted him. I've noted that there is an anterior defect which can be seen in the previous X-rays also. So I've bone grafted him, and now we can clearly see that the fracture is well united and the patient is walking comfortably without any supports. So the next important thing is the soft tissue coverage, and I often found that soft tissue coverage is not a major problem, and flaps are not very commonly required, though they are required in seldom cases. See, most of the times what we notice, there is most of the times, either because of the comminution or because of the excision of the bone, there can be shortening of the tibia that happens. And if you do an acute docking, most of the times this one causes some redundant soft tissue which can give coverage of the bone. And even if there is a small bone defects that are noted, as in this case, this patient developed necrosis. In this patient, the skin was adherent to the underlying bone and was necrosed 10 days after the surgery. But we have just continued with the regular dressings, and we can see that in 2 weeks, in 2 months time, there is reasonable coverage of the uh, bone ends, and also except for the small bare area that is seen. And this is the first case that I'm presenting. He's a 50-year-old diabetic patient. He has a dilated cardiomyopathy, and he had grade 2 open tibia fracture, which was operated elsewhere. And 3 months post surgery, he has developed pus discharge from the fracture site as well as from the nail entry point and the screw sites. And we have noted that there is an intramedullary infection. And my colleague did this. He did the implant removal and he's debrided it. And he felt that the loose fragment that was seen here was not that healthy, so has removed it. And he was given an above knee slab for this. And when he presented to us, we have thoroughly re-debrided it. And what I've done is I've made a sharp edge in the distal fragment, and I've dogged this into the proximal fragment. As further shortening was causing some vascular compromise, I've accepted it at this point of time. And in view of the intramedullary infection, I have delayed the osteotomy by a couple of weeks. 2 weeks later, we have done the osteotomy, and we have slowly started compressing the fracture site, and we have started distracting the osteotomy. This is an acute docking and lengthening phenomenon. But unfortunately, what this patient did was there was reasonably good compression at the fracture site that can be seen. But unfortunately, this patient started compressing the osteotomy as well after he achieved compression at the fracture site. So he compressed the osteotomy by about 10 days, and later we have realized that he was doing it wrong, and we have corrected it. And slowly he started distracting the osteotomy, and we have lengthened him by about 6.5 centimeters. And here we can see that there is good healing at the fracture site, good opposition at the fracture site with docking of the fragments, and the regenerators forming pretty well. And we have accepted about 1 centimeter of shortening for him as his regenerate, as it was very painful for him to distract because the osteotomy, the regenerate was forming up and it was healing. So this is at 14 months post-operative after removal of the fixator. There is very good regenerate and fracture has healed pretty well. And these are his clinical x-rays and his walking videos. That was the walking video was taken immediately after the removal of the fixator, though that's why he was a bit nervous on walking, but otherwise he's walking pretty well and he's back to his routine chores. And this is another case, a 27-year-old male patient who underwent a road traffic accident 8 months before he presented to us. It was a grade 2 tibia fracture. We can see that there is significant comminution that was noted in the distal end of the tibia. He was fixed with an intramedullary rush nail in the fibula and was given a above knee cast for the tibia. So when he presented to us, we have removed all the loose bits of bone, and we have noted that there is one spike that has already united with the proximal fragment. So what I've done is I've acutely dogged it into the distal fragment, and further we thought we would gradually shorten it, and we have done an osteotomy 3 weeks later, and we have started gradually distracting the osteotomy. And this was the serial distraction. We have lengthened him by a total of 5 centimeters. We can clearly see that there is good opposition of the fracture ends, and the osteotomy is distracting reasonably well. And this was after lengthening. We have lengthened him. There is good compression at the fracture that is noticed, and we have lengthened him by 5 centimeters. And at the end of the lengthening, we have seen that he has a slight TA contracture, which is stretched with time. And these are 11 months post-operative X-rays. We can see that there is very good regenerate, and tendoachilles contracture has stretched out. But unfortunately, I don't have clinical images for these patients. And this is the third X-ray and the third case presentation that I'm doing. He's a 42-year-old male patient who was presented to us 8 months post a fracture. It was a grade 3 open tibia, which was treated with an external fixator for about 3 months. And after that, he was given an above knee cast. And when he presented to us, we have noted that his skin was adherent to the underlying bone. There was equinus contracture of about 50 degrees, and he already has a shortening of about 3.5 centimeters. So in this case, we have planned for a 4-ring construct. What we have done is we have acutely shortened the fracture. We have brought the fracture ends together. We have noted that there is a fragment of the bone, that is the spike of bone, that is already united to the proximal fragment. So we have left it in place, and we have opposed the proximal and the distal fragments, and we have made a proximal osteotomy, and we have started lengthening the osteotomy. And this was the patient in whom we have seen necrosis of the wound as there was skin that was directly adherent to the underlying bone. But still we continue. We have just done regular dressings. We didn't do any major intervention. We have just continued with the regular dressings. And this was at 30 days of distraction, at 45 days of distraction. And this was at 65 days of a distraction, where we can clearly see that the wound has healed pretty well. The osteotomy is distracting reasonably well. And I'm still not happy with the contact that is there at the fracture site. So this is at 85 days of distraction, and we can see that his equinus is clearly corrected. And this is at 100 days of distraction. And actually, the treatment is still in progress for this patient. And at this point, I'm planning to take him, because of the lockdown, there was some delay in the treatment. And at this point of time, I want to take him back to the theater. I want to readjust the fracture site, and I would bone graft it if necessary. So these are the serial X-rays of gradual distraction. And so the take-home message that I would like to give in infected non-unions is the adherence to the principles is of utmost importance. Debridement is the most important step, followed by stable fixation and appropriate antibiotic delivery. I think local antibiotic delivery mechanisms can deliver very high loads of local antibiotics, which can deliver antibiotics at the site of infection. And adherence to the principles of Ilizero and bone lengthening are important. Antibiotic, we all have to remember that antibiotic is not an alternative to poor debridement. And adjacent deformities like equinus deformities of the ankle have to be addressed for the patient to start weight bearing. Thank you.